Topaz Jones is a recent discovery of mine that I think is one of the more widespread appeals of some of the albums I've been reviewing as of late. By that I mean, if there's any album you're going to check out that I ever rave about and praise highly, it's going to have to be this one. I hope you do listen to my recommendations because they are good. I do promise. And Topaz Jones especially, I think, has just more of a widespread appeal, as I've already said. I think there's something about his style that's very carefree, youthful, lively. There's a lot of spirit in the way he raps, and I think that is something that could really cross over to many different kinds of audiences of hip-hop. Not only that, but often his flows are very fun, catchy. He's not really taking himself all that seriously at times. The tracks are pretty danceable at points as well. There's a funkiness kind of seeping through the album too that just adds a really nice touch to these tracks. And usually I think what makes hip-hop works so well is a kind of like blend of those things where you kind of bring in a more, you know, exciting element that adds something to the tracks that makes them a bit catchy and stuff like that. And I think this album does that. Kind of like with Brockhampton, their initial appeal, the hypeness, the energy that all the members put into the verses, the beats, like that was what made them stand out. And I think the kind of funky synth funk elements of this album and the soulful elements too are going to be what makes this one stand out. And like I say, if you ain't shaking your booty to these songs, then you're a fool. Mirror has that gooey funkness of someone like Thundercat, and more specifically, more recently, Tyler the Creator, who has been doing that way more with his music. And I've been kind of mixed on Tyler's results. Got an itchy back. Ooh, that's a nice little scratch right there. Yeah. Tyler the Creator, I've been mixed on his stuff, particularly Ego. I know that one got raved about. I still don't really get the rave to that one, honestly. But this track manages to do it in a bit more of a tasteful way, and the vocals aren't half as annoying and as grating as what I thought Tyler's stuff can be like. Even Thundercat at points as well. This track just really blends that together way better for me. Some funny one-liners as well across this album. Some are hit and miss. He's not necessarily like the smoothest writer, but I think he sells it a lot of the time with his charisma, because he's certainly a very smooth sounding talker. But every now and then a line pops up that's a bit cringe, but most of the time I'd say they land quite well. British fellas would die for a pot of tea. He knows as well. I would definitely die for a pot of tea. 100% wouldn't even argue with you with that. Just a lot of cool coming through. He just exuberates this nice charisma that I think sells the tracks. Like I say, not every lyric he's dropping is the most mind-blowing whoa ever. There's nothing really like that across the album, but he's not trying to do that, and what he is trying to achieve works, and I think that's what makes him so likable. DIAL, catchy as hell chorus. Once again, he really knows his strengths and he really emphasizes the choruses, because I think he just knows how to really sell those moments too. I like his self-awareness as well. There's that one line where he clearly keeps up with like social media stuff, where he says, yeah, we march, but the madness will throw you off your bracket. March Madness with all the brackets and stuff, everyone bloody ranking Kanye tracks and, you know, pitting them all against each other. You've all been there on Twitter. It happens pretty much every March. I like the way a rappers reference that in their song, because like I say, it clearly shows his awareness for things like this. Black Tame is the hit of the album. If there's anything that's going to be his breakout song, if he gets a breakout song, I'm not entirely sure, but this would be the one. I mean, I even had a quick scan of the YouTube stuff that he'd been putting out, and this, by the looks of it, has by far the most views at the moment. Maybe there might have been a different track that I missed or something like that, but you can tell that this one has more of that kind of appeal. It's annoying because this track is so sleazy with the lyrics, basically talking about how, you know, I want to be with you, but I can't stop thinking about every other girl that I've been with. And the verses just kind of keep bringing that out, where he talks about, you know, his mum brought him up to not call them hoes, but he still calls them hoes anyway. It is pretty funny though, and like I said at the start, he doesn't take himself too seriously across this album, and I think it makes a track like this really work. Baba 70s though, definitely one of the most confusing tracks for me, because I'm trying to work out where it comes from. There's this like instrumental break that takes over like the chorus. It sounds great as hell. It's once again super funky, and I'm trying to figure out if it's Unknown Mortal Orchestra. Anyone listening to this track, please tell me in the comments where it's coming from. It really reminds me of them. Is it them? Did he sample them? I'd be very surprised if he sampled UMO, but it sounds like them. But it settles so nicely into the rhythmic beat once that break ends. Honestly, the transition is so good. And it kind of reminds me of some like Anderson .Paak type stuff. Possibly The Season, I would say, from Malibu. Anything that reminds me of that is always a win. Gooey funkness comes through on Amphetamines even more, again, with the kind of like pitched vocals that come through. Usually, I've said before, like this can be hit and miss for me, but I think this actually sounds really good. And he rides the beat so well once he comes through. And it just all blends together nicely. It all feels fluid. I think that's the best word for this album. Everything just has a fluidity. His rhymes are fluid, the way he rides the beats are fluid, the way the beats come together and match with his tone of voice, it's just all fluid. Pitched vocals come through on Herringbone. I've already said Brockhampton, but actually this one does remind me of Brockhampton quite a bit. I mean, they are pretty familiar with pitching their vocals to very varying degrees of success across some of those tracks back in their day. Even today they're still doing it, but again, I think you've got to do it at the right level. You don't need to overdo it. You don't need to overdo it on every track, every, you know, lyric, which is sometimes what they do. They just pile it on in the most ugly way. But you know, Topaz Jones, I think, knows when to kind of reel it in, do it in the right moments, and I think that's what makes this track work. I think the track Who is a bit of a missed opportunity. We have Fonte and Maxo on this one. Obviously having Fonte on your album's a pretty big deal considering how beloved he is amongst hip-hop. Fonte, come on, you should know him by now. Maxo, a bit of a younger dude. His verse actually I think is even better than Fonte's, to be honest. I think he sounds great on this track. Good to hear him again too. I thought his EP from a few years ago was really good, so I was hoping to hear more from him at some point. But yeah, the missed opportunity I'm talking about is lack of features that bring in verses. I think this track really shows that he could have had more rappers come through and bring a bit more of a unique perspective on their verses. Maybe that's something for the future. His next album may offer that, who knows. But I think the way the chorus descends is really good with the like, I think that sounds great. And then it keeps repeating across the track too. Not necessarily that hook, but the descending it's a great beat. I guess aside from the fact, you know, some of these moments aren't the most original in the world. We've seen artists do these styles and bring them together, blend them together, and often, you know, he's sounding like a different rapper across the tracks. Apart from those things, I can kind of let those things slide, because as long as it sounds great and he's doing it well, I don't necessarily mind. But aside from that, I will say the only moment on the album that I would definitely maybe cut or change is Gold. What's frustrating about this track though is that he's still got a ton of charisma on this one, even though lyrically it's by far the worst. Not sure about that chorus as well. The beat isn't the best either. You know, the whole "you were hotter as a blonde" thing that comes on in the chorus. It's kind of like something someone would say, you know, to Dua Lipa when she went back to brunette from the blonde, like, you know, moaning about her changing her hair. I don't know why I just think of that, but I just do. Just very little depth on this one. He still has got a bit of a swagger to him, so it's kind of fun. Just not the best moment for me though, but I think the closing track is pretty good. I think the story of the spider is a little confusing, but I think generally the idea of what he's trying to go for at least sort of lands by the end. I do like the one line on this track though where he says, "And the cards we were dealt wasn't shuffled at all. Man, it's a wild goose chase, got me ducking the law." Kind of like that idea of just, you know, some people just not having the same start in life or the best start in life, so it kind of like holds you back and you're further behind than everyone else who's getting a bit more of a head start. But again though, that fluidity comes through. I mean, he's got his mind in the right place. He can flow really well on a track. He sounds great. I just think maybe tidy up some of the lyrics in the future, and I think he'll continue to put out really good music. But even still, like with those minor things I would critique, I still think this is a great listen. Like I say, it's just so fun. You can just throw aside all of those little things that maybe don't land the best or whatever, or maybe, you know, it's not the most lyrically deep rap album you're going to hear it all year, but who cares when it's this good? He's nailed the production side of things. He's nailing his attitude and his personality, his rhyming, his flows, the fluidity. It's really all there. I can't really fault this album. I just think it's a great listen from start to finish. Easy 8 out of 10. And I think honestly this has a lot of crossover appeal. Like I say, if there's any album you're going to check out that I rave about and I give an 8 out of 10, I think it's got to be this one. I think honestly all the name drops I've made across this review, if you're interested in any of those artists, I think this album is certainly for you. Definitely a fun listen, one of my favorite rap albums of the year for very different reasons as, you know, why a more lyrically deeper rap album would be one of my favorite albums of the year too. There's varying levels to this. It's not a one kind of, you know, straight narrow line. It's all over the place, and this just offers me something a bit more fun, and I think that's why I like it so much. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you have heard it. Would love to see what you think. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Check out Topaz Jones. Do let me know your thoughts. Have a good day and goodbye.